republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll, Julie.
George Dufresne.
Here.
Laura Anderson.
Here.
Deb Harris. Here. Betty Sargent.
Here.
Mike Cockrell.
Here. All accounted for. Approval of the agenda, any additions or corrections?
The ones that were given out will have some additions at the end, but it's poverty exemption, planning and zoning, training, and board of review dates. So we'll just add those as we go.
Okay, approval of January 10, January 17.
Oh, we need to
Oops,
still approve
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, well, so one way we didn't amend the agenda. All those in favor of the agenda, since it hasn't been amended, approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. That was my motion.
Oh, you motioned it.
Did anyone
I'll
second it?
support it.
Oh, no. Accounts payable.
No, we don't do, I thought we
No,
did.
now we go to January 10 and 17.
Yes. Now, I did write in a correction under 7B. Harris was sent the application. She didn't send it in.
We were sent, the board was sent one, yeah.
The board was sent. So that is a correction. I've already corrected it on our copy, but there might be some that I just wrote was in there instead of reprinting it because we have trees. So I will make a motion to approve the January 10th minutes as written.
I'll second that.
You want to do the 17th at the same time?
Okay, let's look at this. Oh, what's that?
I wasn't at one of the meetings where I was at.
Do them
Is that better?
separately, that's
Okay.
probably a little cleaner.
So do them separate? Okay. So who seconded? Did someone second?
Great.
George.
Okay. We move to second that January 10th minutes be approved. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion is carried, those are approved. Now we'll go to 17.
I'll make a motion that we accept them as written.
I'll second it.
We move in support of the January 17th minutes be approved as written. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That's approved. Accounts.
We need to move some money around a little bit, just within the budget before we pay the bills. And it's getting near the end, next month's the end of our fiscal year. So we have extra in some line items and we're a little short in others. So I'm going to make a motion that we move $4,800 from our contingency and put $3,000 into Township Hall and $1,800 into the attorney line items. Then I, in the same motion, will move $1,062 from Parks and Rec and put $75 into public safety and $987 into the mechanical electrical permit line item. We've overspent that. We have a lot of mechanical electrical permits going up this year. So we have to keep that. We can't pay him until we can move some money in that line item. And we had $432 left over from solid waste, which we will not use in this fiscal year, and we're moving that into elections because Patty has to send out some materials for the May election, and we had budgeted without the May election. That kind of just,
They told us there wasn't going to be.
there wasn't going to be one. So, and that will cover it all and stay within the budget. I need a second.
I'll second.
Move and support that we amend the accounts payable to everything we just said.
It's all written in front of you.
we- So our total is correct then?
Correct.
It's 22,598.88.
That is what the checks told. And they had to come out of areas that needed a little extra funding before we take the money out.
So we would vote on the amendments first, and then we'll vote on the tables.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll move that we accept the amendments.
I'll support.
You have all the amendments written on that piece of paper.
I know, but I'm just trying to keep track of who, because first of all, you moved to move, and then Laura seconded the amendments. But
Let's-
now.
But we didn't vote on it.
You didn't
Okay, so
vote.
We
let's
didn't
step
vote
back.
on it.
Where are we on the amendments?
Okay,
We
so
just have to vote.
The amendments have been moved and seconded.
by
So all we need to vote.
Patty and George,
No, by Deb and Laura.
Okay.
Deb and George.
I don't know. I can't keep track.
It was Laura, but then George.
That's fine.
did.
Yeah.
Leave it to Laura, excuse me, seconded it, we'll vote on that. Then we'll address paying the bills.
Right.
So is there any other discussion on the amendments to the budget? If not, please call the roll.
George Dufresne,
Yes.
Laura Anderson, Deb Harris,
Yes.
Patty Sargent,
Yes.
Mike Cockrell.
Yes. Amendments are adopted. Now we'll vote on accounts payable.
Now we're voting on paying the bills.
Paying the
As
bills.
I did.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to pay the bills.
I'll second it.
Specify.
Okay, move to support that we pay the bills. Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
George Dufresne,
Yes.
Laura Anderson.
Yes.
Deb Harris,
Yes.
Patty Sargent,
Yes.
Mike
Let's just not
Cockrell.
pay.
Yes, bills allowed. Okay, correspondence, many letters regarding solar energy projects in River Township have been received. Reports, financial, January 23. Jeff, please.
Okay, we started out the month with $767,807.19. And as you, if you were here for the January meeting, you remember our payables were quite huge. We paid our portion of the drain district and we paid our portion of Alamus Road. So our payables were $234,162.25. We took in $25,672.71 in January. So we ended the month, our general fund balance, which includes everything, $559,317.65 for the end of January.
Great. Any questions? Not, it does not need an approval, just stands noted. Life earnings, all still there, haven't lost any. It is a good thing we took them off with Jetty because the pile of snow out there is pretty. We were in that accident a long time ago. I did find a used Cape Chase sign to get the one fixed on Irish Road. I'll have to kind of revamp it a little bit, but it is a legal sign. It's 4 inches, it's got reflected, it's green like a restaurant. It's not new to the door. Okay, solid waste, Harris.
Me again. Got that here. We had our meeting on January 17th. We looked at the budget, we're doing real well. We have $175,016 in the general fund for the Solid Waste Authority. We no longer pay a subsidy to the Solid Waste Authority, and we have paid for the Pride Days or the free dump days, however you prefer to refer to them. We were scheduled to have them in May this year, but the county is not holding the free tipping day for the fees and everything because they're having a changeover and they use the word sell as to where all the garbage is put more or less, and that they're developing and building a new one and they will not have the space for it. So we have the chance to possibly move it to the fall in September when this is completed with the county. That's the best information I have at this time. It hasn't been decided. Solid Waste Authority will be meeting again this summer, and of course we'll keep working on that. And if that doesn't come through, I'm sure we'll come up with an alternative if we can to sometime this summer. But everybody in the county is off the hook. They're not doing that this year in the spring. We set the schedule for next year, and the only days we don't, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, it will be closed. Other than that, it'll be regular hours. Everything seems to be going quite well there. Tim does a good job, runs a pretty tight ship, can keep track of what's going for scrap metal and all that. We were really down in December, but that probably had a little bit to do with the weather around Christmas and the days we were closed, but picked right back up again in January. Okay. If you have any questions, I have folders on the Solid Waste Authority. We also had an audit, and it was a very good audit. Susie McGee does our books for the Solid Waste Authority. She does a great job. And I also have the materials, how many people go from White River or all the other townships. That's here available for you anytime you come in. Here Wednesday morning, I keep it in my desk and come and take a look at it. I won't read it to you all tonight. The lay's over. Any questions? Okay.
Thanks. Laura?
Gonna be over 2 minutes.
Good.
Okay, so SEEK is the Chemours Environmental Impact Committee, and it's a group of people that are really dedicated to helping with the cleanup of the old DuPont site, which is now called Chemours. So on 125, SEEK requested or started a letter writing campaign with newspaper articles that show that the cleanup process, which was started way back in 1993, and then another time at 2010 when they were going to work with the White Lake Pack Group, it's still not done. So and on 130, Claire drafts a letter to Rhonda Blair, who is the Eagle representative for the management department that works for the cleanup. And she sent copies to the Michigan State representatives and to the staff of the Eagle, which is the MMD hazardous waste part of the Eagle group. And also our SEEK members. We have urgent need for communication about the cleanup at Chemours. We were promised it would take place in the year of 2013. DuPont meeting with the White Lake Pack Group then. The White Lake Pack had worked with state and federal officials for 22 years. Today, 6 decades later, there's still no action going on there for the cleanup. And we have been unable to receive an answer from the status of cleanup, and are again requesting a meeting with Eagle. SEEK, on 130, SEEK requests an updated map of the groundwater around Pearson outlet into the bayou to see where the water flow is going. On 2-1, they did a media outreach meeting at Claire's house, taking points on the talking points on the wants list. We want removal of the landfills, restoring Mirror Lake, testing the soil under the manufacturing footprints of the plant, testing the soil under the pipeline, and sediment testing in Sedona Bayou. So they came up with a letter template and a list of recipients and to process to engage writers for the outreach, for the letter outreaching. Also discussed was Tom Thine's newspaper article on background and the history of DuPont. Jim Rose and one of our members, and Sarah Warber, about sediment sampling paper, and Marissa's letter about Sedona Bayou. So there's an article to the public that Tom Thines is working on. 2.6, seek receive volumes 1 and 2 of the requested plume characterization field activities and data analysis report from Rhonda Blair. Also received Appendix B of the 2021 VIAP report. A VIAP is, let's see, I can't remember. Volatile volatile underneath the ground. SEEK gains another partner for conservation and restoration thanks to the conversation between Bob Lloyd and Claire. His name is Marty Haltgren. He's going to be at the next meeting, next SEEK meeting. Rhonda Blair does respond with possible dates to meet our whole project team for 1 hour, and that meeting will be held on 4/25, April 25th. And our next SEEK meeting is tomorrow, Zoom at 2 p.m. And this is all their work. They're an amazing group of people. We are blessed to have them in this community. They're relentless at trying to get this cleaned up for us. So hats off to them.
So Rhonda Blair's eagle, and she's finally responding.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
A lot of pressure.
Right.
A lot of pressure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well done.
Okay, Julie, you got any for us? Recycling?
Yes, we met on February 2nd in Muskegon. We reviewed Chapter 3 of the 2017 study of the recycling at that time in Muskegon County. We discussed all the suggested improvements in the study and focused on the consultant's recommendations. Some of the recommendations he had were to begin to develop a recyclables transfer station at the landfill, but nothing has been done. To review the transfer stations already in place and try to see if we can combine services that are already offered, so it's not redundant services by different companies. So our next meeting is March 2nd. We'll review which programs complement each other in Muskegon County, what our timeline would look like, and what would work best in Muskegon County. We're looking at other counties around the state to see what's working there, so we need to decide what would work best in this county.
Thanks. How about you, Patty?
I have no report. We had no meetings and just empty your septic tank every few years. You don't want a backup.
Okay, planning commission, you got anything to, George and Joe?
Yeah, I'll give a bit of a report. As you know, the moratorium is in place, and we have been working with Nathan Mayman from Williams & Works. We were able to give him a huge list of amendments we would like to see for the solar zoning ordinance. And he's working on those, and he's going to get together with our attorney.
Thank you.
And then he is coming back here for a meeting when? February 27th
At 1 p.m.
at 1 p.m.
And the
here.
reason that it's 1 p.m. is because that's when he could come.
Yeah, we have, it's a work session, and so we're not ready to present amendments yet, but that will be forthcoming, I'm sure. And secondly, what I just handed you was a zoning amendment that we did vote on at the planning commission meeting. It's one that we had talked about before we got kind of interrupted and preoccupied with another topic. And so this will be going to Cliff, the attorney, to put into language. It's called a transitional open space. And the reason I copied the 2018 Commure's summary map of areas of concerns, landfills, waste management units, and the projected contamination flow was to give you a sense of why we
I
did
just
this.
showing everybody else.
Oh, yeah. converting all of Kimmore's owned and managed property to this new zone called transitional open space. And I'll just read it, it's just one paragraph. This district applies to land that is contaminated or suspected of contamination. In general, land in this district is intended for or potentially subject to remediation, which is not yet complete. Thank you, we know that from Seek's work. Access by the general public is not allowed, although access by invitation of the owner or property or the owner's agent is allowed. Activities on the property are limited to remedial actions until such time as government authorities having jurisdiction over the remediation certifies that the remediation is complete and successful. The decision to rezone transitional open space will include, among other considerations, recommendations from appropriate government authorities regarding the remediation and the safety of the general public. And so what this means is, if we adopt this, whatever property is in the Transitional Open Space Act, nothing can be built on it, no building permits of any kind would be allowed until they rezone the property. And in order to rezone the property, they have to prove to us that there's no contamination, or the contamination has been cleaned up to a standard that will allow for the safety of dwelling. Yes,
And they cannot sell it either.
they could sell it,
They can
but
sell it, but it remains, okay. This is what they did with Hooker Chemical Company.
this is exactly the wording that Montague Township uses.
And, okay.
Now, they also have, in Montague Township, they have a permanent open space, because it can never, ever, in the foreseeable future, be developed, anything done to it at all.
So what happens to the industrial zone?
I would like to see the industrial zone go away personally. We have to talk about that. But most of the industrial zone would be, it would be converted to this transitional open space.
So we would have no place in the township for industry then?
Not as a permitted use.
I thought you would have to allow that in every township.
Well-
There has to be a space for that.
We have a mobile home park zone in our zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
We don't have the zone, we have the definition for it. Property would have to be rezoned to it. So, the same with industrial. If somebody wanted an industrial zone, they would have to convert a property to
So
industrial.
the planning commission feels that we should not have an industrial zone?
I can only speak for myself, but I think most likely there isn't, support for such. We don't have public water and public sewer, and so intense development would be very difficult. The only reason we have it now is because of DuPont, you know.
We do have one industry there, Key, correct?
Yes, but
And
they
that would
don't.
stay as industrial?
Yeah,
area?
that's not, that wouldn't be rezoned.
Right, that's
Transitional
right, because it
open
wouldn't be associated with the,
Yeah, but after looking at this plume thing, we just got, you mentioned that, we
Right,
just got, this is
exactly.
part of what we just got from Eagle. There's some potential groundwater contamination that, I don't know if we were aware of before, that goes outside the property lines of DuPont. So, but anyway, that's where we're at.
The
I mean,
blue is the potential contamination in the water. What's the pink? Is that surface contamination, or is that also within our,
That's another plume.
a whole different, because, okay, there's a
That's
that
captured,
plume.
wait a minute, that's captured by the purge well.
Those are the purge wells, okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. You can barely see it.
That goes in White Lake,
Yeah.
and the other one's in
And
Lake
the blue
Michigan.
discharges to the surface water. Yeah. And then you can see the little, landfills here
Yeah,
and there.
got that one.
Yeah. So, we haven't got the exact wording from Cliff. I mean, he approved this in general about a year ago when we first started talking about this. So, the planning commission needs to follow up with Cliff and, get this all set, but, so this would be a zoning amendment, so it would follow the same routine as any zoning ordinance amendment. You know, we'd have the public hearing, and then after the public hearing, we would then recommend it to the township board.
So then if it was cleaned up, what would it would be individually zoned, or how would that work?
Yes,
You would have to address each segment that did get cleaned up. If it gets cleaned up to the standards set by the state, then we would look at it relative to, do we want to zone it as residential or whatever, basically, the condition of the site. But excuse me, that decision would be made by the planning commission with a recommendation to the board.
sure.
Until there's cleanup occurring, nothing would happen with this total site. Which I think is a good idea, because we've been talking about this for 15 years, nothing's happened yet.
So now we have power lines though, and a power,
We have the right of way for,
so those things would obviously stay there.
well, yeah, I mean, nothing that exists now would be removed from, by changing the zone. Yeah. So, we wouldn't be able to tell consumers to remove the power lines.
Right.
Nothing, right now, the ground can't be disturbed, and removing those power lines would definitely disturb the ground. So, yeah.
So that area right there wouldn't be rezoned, that area underneath the power lines wouldn't be rezoned, what would that be?
Well, that's an easement, that's a consumer's energy easement that runs through their property.
So
So
that
their
would stay the
proposal-
same?
Yeah, their proposal would not impact that easement.
Okay, so that would still
But we know,
be like it is in the farmers' fields and stuff like that, where there's nothing built underneath it, it's just
right,
theirs,
Right.
owned by them.
right,
Okay,
it's
like
an
visualize.
easement, a public utilities easement,
Right, I have
yeah.
to,
The, I don't know, anyway, any other questions about that now? We'll keep working on it, we'll have to set a public hearing and all that jazz. And other than that, we're just chugging along. We'll have, we have some waterfront residential site plan to review next week, and daycare application. And at this point, I don't know how many children they want in their daycare. Are they here, by the way?
That is also subject to a public hearing.
They can have up to 7 children.
They have that already. They want more.
Okay, and she hasn't told me
Okay.
how many.
So she will come and present, and then once she presents, then we have to put together a public hearing, which would be here, and it would have to be advertised 15 days prior to the meeting.
Yes,
And then we'd have the meeting, and everybody could chime in on whether they think that's a good idea.
yes, at 8 children in the daycare, it becomes a special land use permit, which, as Patty described, requires the public hearing. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
Yep.
Good job.
Okay, Emmons, a few things. We're gonna put some new flooring in the building over there. We actually rent the building from Suburban Propane, which is the headquarters for the ambulance authority. We also have one in Monterey Fire, just a car there, and we basically rent a space there. But, we're gonna put new flooring in, that's in the agreement, that, the rental agreement that we maintain the building, and flooring is maintenance. It's gonna be about $3,332. We're gonna switch healthcare providers for the employees, won't take place until probably November, but, the way it's figured out, it's gonna be about a $10,000 savings. There was some give and take between the employees and the authority, and they've all agreed to it, so we will be doing that. In the past, we've given almost all of our own physicals to the employees. We've had several machines that do a lot of the testing, and whatever we couldn't do, we'd send out. We're probably gonna switch to BioCare, which is a company that comes and actually does it at the authority. They have a mobile unit that does that. We didn't know anything about them, maybe somebody does. I don't think you knew much about them. They might be a newer company, I don't know. But they're in this area. They do this area, let's put it that way. Blue Lake just went to them, Blue Lake Fire, and they've been really happy with them. So we're probably gonna do that. We're gonna take it up next month. They've got a proposal to us to I think it's up to 22 employees, $5,200 or something like that. The machines that we have are becoming obsolete, we can't get parts, and they're expensive to replace, so we won't do it. We'd be better off going this way, so we will. The audit is in and it's clean, I have a copy of it if anybody wants to see that. And for the first time, our billing agent has given us for a breakdown of each of the units. We already, of course, we knew how many runs we have in a year, but what those runs actually were and what the care was. We had 77 runs in the township last year, now that's a calendar year, and ending last December, and we transported 50 of those, which is kind of high. Usually it's about 50-50, we don't get paid for about 50 of the runs we do. If we don't transport, we don't get paid. Reason for dispatch. The three top ones were breathing problems, falls, weakness, or lethargic. And the big one that's creeping up is some sort of a mental state. That gets really sticky. Remember I was talking about that last month, or the month before maybe about. That's becoming kind of hard to handle. And the police are getting trained in it. We're probably going to get trained too for, I don't know how to put it, mental calls. I mean, people call the ambulance that somehow are having some real trouble.
Mental health
And it's
crisis.
not physical. Pardon me?
Call it mental health crisis.
That's what it is.
That's
Or
what
a
they call it. That's what
psychiatric
they call it.
crisis.
Okay, but anyway, so this was really interesting. There's a whole report here on all the other ailments that people call the ambulance for. They're, of course, there were some frivolous ones, but most of those were lack of information about what their situation was. And we don't, you see all the ads on television, if you've got this symptom, go to 911, whatever. So we don't mind, if the patient calls in and think they're in trouble, we go. But I can't find that number right offhand, but it was not that many, maybe a half a dozen, so.
Mike, is there any plans, do you think, for any further education for the ambulance personnel relative to mental health problems?
Not for us at this point, but I think the police departments are getting it, are going to get it. They may already be getting it, but we've discussed it, and we will do it if we're offered it. Let's put it that way. But we have discussed it, yes. So far, we haven't had too much trouble, but it is on the rise. We know that those calls, more calls are starting to happen that way. One other thing, we still do transports from Lake Shore to Mercy or other places. And we average about $758 for those runs. And those are really good for us. They're a money maker, they're transports. We don't do a lot of services. If there is an emergency during that transport, we get paid for that. But we pay each of the employees that make that run, there's two. They each get an extra $50 and they really like that. And we do run a lot of them. In fact, we could have run 31 of them last month, but we only ran 16 because we don't go, and we don't take those transports unless we've got both ambulances, at least one ambulance, in our district. Otherwise, we'd be stuck without one, so. But the employees really like that. Fire authority. Yeah, remember we were talking about CDs last month? Susie told us that was gonna take out a 4% CD for 9 months at Shelby State Bank.
Yeah, we were meeting down there, but yeah, I talked to her when I was
Oh.
doing our other stuff. Yeah, that was.
We're close to it though.
Yeah.
Yours was.
Yeah,
close.
but we can get ours whenever we need it and not pay a penalty, and that's with a penalty, and they weren't too sure how they were setting that up at first either. But yeah, the Solid Waste Authority did, I think, put some money in it.
Okay. Okay,
We put ours in the money market, like
yeah.
we had motion to.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I
close.
think we've got some in there too that we could get out. Yeah, some cool.
Oh, yeah, she liked the money
Is
market
that Coal
too.
America, I think. And it's,
Or, no, ours is at Shelby, yeah, hers is too.
oh, okay, I thought you was gonna do it Coal America.
Are you still in business?
Yeah, we're gonna see. Michael? Yeah, we're gonna see.
Yeah,
Coal America.
still far away.
Runs have backed off a little bit from last year. Runs have been high. I mean, the last 2 years, runs have been high, both at the ambulance and at the fire. Last year, we ran 535 runs at the fire department. That's more than one a day.
How many full-time firefighters do you
We
have?
want 22, we don't have that many. We have 2 in training. The night of our meeting, one of these, we got a probationary firefighter who is Hunter Giddens. He's enrolled and he's in the academy, but he hasn't graduated. And then we got another one that's Casey Ashby. He has passed his first registry exam for the MFR license. So he's getting close, but I think we're right around 18. But we're starting to face the same problem that a lot of other departments are. We've got really great, good volunteers, but a lot of them are getting retirement age or beyond. There's not a lot of interest in young people getting into the emergency services. There just isn't. They're in really short supply, especially paramedics and EMTs, but so are fire departments. Everybody's starting to see it. We look around at the fire department, we're gonna be seeing it too.
We're not exactly spring chickens up here.
You would have to bring that up. But anyway, fire department's in really, really good shape. I'm still hopeful we can lower the millage even more. I think every one of you got a copy of just a little bit of the ending period for the 31st of December and what it says there. So we've got a lot of money. We're in good shape. We got a few big bills coming up. One of them's going to be to do the air filtration system in the bay, and that's going to be probably $100,000 to $150,000. The one that's in there's failed or is failing, so that's going to be an issue. The LED lights are in place. That's really going to change our light bill, and so good. Public comment.
We have one person that signed up, and that's Ruthie Eilers.
Do I just stand?
Sure.
Okay, I'm Ruthie Eilers. My husband just turned to me and said, "Are you kidding?" I signed my name on the third line, hoping 2 other people would be speaking. My husband and I live in Clyde Township, and we attended our meeting last evening, and it kind of spurred us to be here tonight. I just feel like I need to express myself as a West Michigan girl who moved here from the city, moved back here to get away from metal and ugly and crowded spaces. And I have appreciated driving every week to my mom's house, to my friends' houses, and seeing the beauty of God's creation here. My kids are languishing in a life that cannot be found like is here. And I want to just express our sympathy toward you as homeowners and as residents, as people who place your trust in people to have your best interests at heart. You're an example. We're all watching, and we're listening, and we're trying to be proactive to make sure that this doesn't happen to us. Last summer, I thought, when I heard about all of this, I just thought about a night when I had been at Minor Park, and I was driving around here, and there were two vans, and they were driven by moms, and they had 3 or 4 kids in each van, and they were lost looking for the sunflower fields. And they said, we're from Muskegon, we're not familiar with this area at all, and we went to Peekadills today and had lunch, and the kids played, and they told about all of the places that they visited because of the sunflower fields. And nobody's gonna do that for solar panels. I guess I'm just astonished that we have placed such a premium on one man's money above someone else's, that the farmer's dollar is any more important than somebody's home and their acreage where they've given their life's savings to build a home for their children. And the Green Deal, to me, the greenest thing is the pockets of the people who are pushing this. You are not going to see the profit. You're going to see your house value cut in half, probably. And the people who replace your funds, we all know what that's gonna look like. 20 years from now, nobody's gonna be coming to look at the beautiful West Michigan coast here. And we are sad for you. And I just had to say it, that what's happening here is not right, that everybody knows it's not right, and we're with you in spirit.
Okay, unfinished business.
I didn't put my name down, can I make a public comment?
Sure.
Sam Bender, this is in regards to the fire authority. Mike, just hearing you talk about having a hard time getting new people in, I'm wondering if it's possible to use the surplus that we have or keeping the millage the same to make our authority an employer of choice by providing additional training, scholarship, compensation, and to be able to use the existing millage in that way going forward. Just a thought, consider.
I think we pay for their training 100%. I don't know what we pay them, and I think we pay them, depends on how long the training is. If they go to a 3-hour training, I think we pay them for at least 1 hour, maybe 2. I don't remember exactly, but we do help them get through training.
So like get somebody, to get the certification is just, do you have to go to school for that?
Oh, yeah, I forget how many hours it is, small hours.
There just isn't a whole lot of interest in.
It just isn't anybody volunteer. So, yeah, and then we're not the only Blue Lakes talking about it, especially the smaller departments that aren't full-time. The full-time departments, they even are having trouble from what we're hearing, so, and they pay really well, so. But anyway, thank you.
Hey, Mike. Tim Balcom. I live on Old Highway 99, I'm sorry. In October, I brought up the fact that there was a trailer on Minor Park Road between Old Highway 99 and 156, I believe, right there by Hubbard, between the two. It's on the north side of the road. It sat vacant for, we figure, probably 15 years. And I asked, were permits gotten? And at that time, you said no. Coincidence, whatever it was, but it was like 4 days after I said something, that there was work in that house. A driveway was put in, which is supposed to be the county does that.
You aware of that, George?
No.
There was, the house was blocked up after animals had fun with it for inside and out for 15 years. Now it's on the market for $189,000. And we don't know what the wiring in the house looks like. Somebody could be buying a death trap. Has permits been gotten? Because this was an in and out job. No one's living there and it's for sale. Are we allowing this in our community? How do we keep up with our permits? Or how do we have?
George's hand was, go ahead, George.
If they had requested a permit, that's fine, that's one thing. If they have not requested a permit, and if they're doing renovation internal to the building, they have not done the expansion or anything else, we would not be aware of that, in all honesty. I mean, if somebody were to bring that to the attention of the board or to me before the fact, we could get involved and try to figure out what's going on. But I was not aware of anything going on with that particular structure, to be honest with you.
Okay, but no permits were received, so how can they sell something without getting proper?
You're asking a good question, but to the wrong party. I mean, there's nothing to prevent somebody from selling a piece of property they own. Now, if they went through and renovated based upon their own actions without a permit, that's an issue. There's been no inspection done relative to electrical or anything else. That becomes, I hate to say this, but a buyer beware scenario. Somebody goes to buy that property, if they don't bother to inspect it or have it inspected relative to the electrical as a prime example, that's on their problem, not our problem. We
So-
can't force them to do that.
So if I put a building on my place, nobody, you guys get a permit,
No,
I can leave it, I don't have to tear it down.
if you, let's start over again. If you want to build
If I
something,
build a piece, a barn on my place, don't get a permit, as soon as it's up and I start putting stuff in it, I guess you can't tell me to tear it down, right? Because that's what you're saying with this house.
if you got a permit to build the barn,
If I didn't,
if you didn't, then you cannot build a barn. I don't think you're on an agricultural zone. If you're an ag, you can build a barn. If you're not, you have to get a permit to build that barn.
okay, but
Or
they
what,
didn't,
is
they
what he's
didn't get a
asking.
permit over there on that trailer, so I'm saying, what if I do the same thing on my property? You're not making them tear that down, so I guess if you don't have a written rule or law, we should have something amended or put in there that if you're gonna put something on a piece of property, you have this many days, or we're gonna charge you to have that pulled away at your expense to the junkyard.
I think you're conflicting a couple things from my perspective. Number one is if, in fact, they have a structure on a piece of property, all right, they own that structure, all right? How it got there 20 years ago, I don't know, and I don't think anybody here truly knows. If they're gonna try to build something new on a piece of property, depends on what the zone is, right? If they are in an ag zone, they can build a barn, right? Once they build that barn, we have no control, literally, what they do with that barn, right? If you wanna build something on your property, if you are not in ag, you have to get a permit to do that building. When you get that permit, you go to our building inspector, he in fact enforces all the laws of the state, to make sure it's built correctly.
All right, I'm asking you then, as the trustee that checks permits, to check on that house and verify that there's permits. If there aren't, it should not sit there, by what you just said.
Okay? Let's assume that there is no permit for what was done. What I can do is I can get the building inspector to go out there and verify what has and has not been done. But my fear is that if that building were there and was boarded up, I don't know how many years,
somebody came in and opened it up and renovated the inside of that building, all right? I doubt that they got a permit to do that. Therefore, the only check and balance that exists today is, was that renovation done to the state laws relative to the internal building, electrical power, whatever? I can get the building inspector to go out there and look at that.
Because since October, Smith Blocks, they have put a foundation, they've jacked the house up, put a foundation under it. And you should know if they've got a permit or not.
I can, yes, that's true, but if somebody does that, nobody drives around this community observing those things. So unless brings it to the attention of this board or me, something is happening, I have no way of knowing that.
And that is why I brought it up in October. No activity was happening. I was told that was an LLC property, that you didn't know the name.
We didn't.
And
Right.
4 days later, there's activity. So somehow at this meeting, it seemed like something was leaked. I mean, that's, from my perspective, I mean, it sat there vacant for 15 years, and 4 days later.
It
there's
could have been a
activity.
coincidence.
It could have been,
The
but
timing could have been a coincidence, but the question still is, vacant building on a piece of property, boarded up, not being used, right? Somebody comes forward and does something to that building. If they do something internal to that building, they in theory do not need a permit to do that. They are not expanding the footprint, okay? If in fact they jack it up and put a foundation under it, that's a different scenario. They would need a permit to do that. Now,
thank you. But when I asked that question in October, if they had a permit, to the board's knowledge, there
They
was no
did
permit.
not, okay?
So you knew that, and now the house is for sale, and I'm
Well, I
thinking,
didn't know it was for sale. Didn't anybody know
there's
it
a
was
for sale sign, right?
Just now, it just came up for sale, not in October, but it just came up for sale. So now it's on the market with the driveway, on blocks. It wasn't really boarded up for
sat there.
years. It just sat there. It was brought in, left, dumped in our area on a piece of property. And then all of a sudden, after he mentions it at a township meeting, all of a sudden it's jacked up, got a driveway, and it's for sale. And that was pretty much a coincidence, according to us, because we don't have any other way of thinking about it. But if it's supposed to have permits, and if we're selling it to some innocent bystander, like my son, who's in the market for housing at that level, we do want to protect the people that are here. We don't want to have to call the fire department to come out and rescue them.
You've raised a couple of interesting points from my perspective. Number one is, if they put in a driveway that did not exist, they should have gone theoretically to get a driveway permit from the road commission. Point number one. Point number two is, if they did renovations internal to an existing structure, I don't have any way to control that, nor do they need a permit to do that.
If they don't change the
If they
footprint.
don't change the exterior footprint of the building.
But they did.
Pardon?
They did.
Well, now we're back to the other point again. So what you're telling us is that things have been done to the building, changed the footprint, jacked it up, they required a permit to do that. If they did not get that permit, which to my knowledge they did not, that then becomes an issue that we have to address from a building inspector's perspective, what they do or they don't do right now, after the fact.
Now, we can
This
get
is
the
all been
address
done.
on it and call Troy.
They must have put a well in there, huh?
That's on my.
We don't know.
Did they put a well in there, no?
I don't know about that.
They must have.
There's no mailbox, but
It's
They-
on my
they had a-
park on the north side.
it's on the north
Just
side.
It's the one you couldn't find out the owner because they wouldn't pay the taxes, they go up for tax sale, the banks would pay the taxes, so we never could know who owned it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
but it was
we can look up who
some-
owns it, we have to figure that out. And then Troy would be, he made, say they hired a mechanical electrical inspector to do something on the inside, they wouldn't go to George
They
for
wouldn't
that,
come to us
they
for
would
a
go
permit.
to Troy DeBro. And then that's saying that that they have the integrity to hire a mechanical electrical person to do that, a lot of people don't. So we can check with Troy and see, and if they haven't done anything, especially with the road, that should go to the road commission.
Yeah, the road commission needs to be notified.
And if the bricks are larger than the house, then that's a problem with us. And I just gotta go drive by it.
They probably roofed it too, then. Must have-
Pardon me?
They must have roofed it too. The
I
roof is-
don't know
I
about
see a
that.
nod.
It's a huge roof.
Do you know the number on that house by any chance?
There's no mailbox.
No, there's no mailbox, I don't know the address,
You
nothing.
can find it on
Is
Green
it
Ridge.
7-4?
Green Ridge Realty.
Oh,
7-4.
Minor Park Road.
I know what
They have a
happened.
sign out front right now.
The guy that originally put that in there was a contractor, I think, bought it, moved it in, didn't set it up, and then he did his own excavating, and he cut the cable to phone line. But that's a big line. And, I think everybody to the west was out, didn't have a phone for about a week. And they fined the heck out of that guy, and we never saw him again. And then we had an address and a name, but every time we sent the taxes there, they came back. So
But
then-
somebody
and then
always
somebody
paid
started
it
paying
before
it.
it went up for tax
And then
sale.
somebody kept paying it before the tax sale, so that's how we got to that point, but,
So
we don't,
Trailer?
It's a
That
double
was
wide.
what do you call
A
that?
prefab.
Yeah, prefab.
yeah,
Oh,
Modular.
well,
What's
Technically
politically
not.
correct? Manufactured home.
two different definitions, yeah, okay.
okay, well, we can find out more than we know right now, it sounds like, so.
But all of this, from what I'm hearing, is after the fact, which just makes it more complicated.
Right, right.
And our only choices at this stage, I think, is to go back to our building inspector to see if what was done to code. And if it's not done to code, it should not be marketed, from my perspective, but
Yeah,
Michigan has some weird laws relative to what you can sell and you can't sell. And a lot of it boils down to buyer beware.
And the reason why I brought it up was because I know that you're looking at homes on Hancock that have some issues too. So,
okay, thank you.
For sure.
Unfinished business, stairs to Lake Michigan Beach, Hancock Road. Got any more information for us?
I have not, it's
Okay.
been a busy month.
Okay,
I need to find somebody that
Yeah,
wants to
taxes.
draw plans.
sure.
Okay.
Item B is just public notices were replaced in legal ads for the Speedy Chronicle and Live. Sports and shorts, I was confused last month, wasn't I? I was wrong last month.
So was I.
Uh,
And that never happened.
I know. So I was under the impression that we had to pay the $3,500. We've supported it for a long time, years anyway, haven't we?
Yep, and Montague Township voted last month to do their half, and Tracy called and said it was a no-brainer, you guys always go for it, and I said, well.
For some reason, I
You
don't know
need
why.
to redo that this month, it is $100 more than it was last year, $125.
And I was thinking it was like $300 or $400 more, but I was wrong on that too, but, okay, so we've got this before, do we wanna move on
Yes,
tonight?
we have to let, because Montague's waiting.
They've already
for us,
moved,
And
okay.
so it's working towards the plan.
So we need a motion to support that.
I'll make a motion to support that program, Sports and Shorts, to $1,750 in cooperation with Montague Township.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported that be done. Is there any other discussion? If not, would you please call the roll?
George Dufresne,
Yes.
Laura Anderson,
Yes.
Deb Harris,
Yes.
Patty Sargent,
Yes.
Mike Cockrell.
Yes. Motion is carried. Okay, item D, unfinished business, the six-month moratorium is in place for the solar. That ordinance is 57-2023. New business, FOIA request from Barn Law has been completed. Took over 50 hours, and printed 620 pages.
Well, it was more like 1,000 pages, but I stopped counting at 6.
Okay. Tonight after the meeting, we're gonna do our budget work session to set the budget for the next year, because we end the 31st of March, that's our fiscal year end. So if you think this is fun, stick around.
I want to add one more thing to the FOIA thing. We did charge, they have paid $540 so far, and we have more than we're billing now. Because our time is valuable, and our printer stopped working, and then our computer stopped working, and
Taxes are due.
sending out absentee ballot applications. It was busy.
Okay, so next month there'll be a budget approval meeting to approve the budget if we so do, which we should get done tonight, won't we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That'll be at 6:30 prior to the meeting. The countywide village, May 2nd, it's the first time holding an election since the passage of the 9-day early voting was passed.
And I have some information about that. The county is, or the state is not prepared as of right now for the 9 days of early voting. So that will not happen in May, because they have to rewrite all the programs for the machines, because the machines have to be able to be shut down, we have to be able to charge the batteries, we have to turn them back on and then put more ballots through. And so there's a lot of work that goes on to get that prepared. And we were not expecting a May election. So we will not have the 9 days of early voting. And the 9 days would be, we would have to have election workers here every day, 8 hours a day for 9 days, and that's really expensive. So that's not gonna happen this time. We have a possible another election in August, and then another possible election in November. And we have always had absentee, and absentees get counted just like regular ballots. And we open them here in front of everybody, and anybody wants to watch the process, we have chairs set up so that anybody can come in and watch our process. It's not a big deal. But the absentee ballot application that you get this time is only good for the May election. Now, the next election, it is probably going to be a permanent absentee ballot, because that's what we voted on last year. And that means that once you fill out an absentee ballot application and we have your signature on file, unless we see that you've moved or that you died, you will get a ballot without an application, and it will be mailed to your house. However, if you go to Florida and you don't get back in time for the election, the ballot will not be forwarded. So you have to let us know where you are and where you want your ballot sent, because we can't tell from this room where you are. And so the moral of the story is next month you're going to get your absentee ballot applications. If you want to fill one out online, you can go to the State of Michigan website and you can fill one out. They'll put your signature on it. It gets sent to me. I print it. You get a ballot. Now, we don't have ballots yet. They won't come out until the middle of March, but you can be ready for it. So, any questions about that? All right. Julie and I will be here, probably Deb will be here, probably Laura will be here, working the election, May 2nd. And there will be other people too. Susan, yeah, you probably be here. Put it on your calendar.
Put it on our calendar.
Thank you.
Okay, poverty exemption, this is not on your agendas, but we've got new rules for the poverty exemption, which the board of review will look at. They're more stringent than the last time, it looks like to me. You gotta kind of bare your soul to get one, but you gotta be pretty poor to get one too. I wonder how they can even run a household on what those requirements are.
Well, this lists what the household is, this lists other things they have.
That's the other thing, that's what I was
This is
referring
the
to.
new guidelines, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so,
But we have to by law have this in place.
well, we've had a couple in the past. We've had at least one, and that person has passed away, but, I think we had two at one time, so. It relates to your real estate property taxes, nothing else, as far as I know, just, that's all we do.
Well, that's all we look at.
But the board review does that, so, I think that has to come back to us, though, doesn't it? Did we vote on it or not?
No, I think the board reviewed.
Yeah,
You never voted on it, Craig, did we? Didn't go back to the board, did
I
it?
think you guys decide on board review, probably look at it the March board review as
Yeah,
well.
we have to approve
So we can
this,
set the rule.
and then it's all on them.
Yeah, but this has to get done tonight because they have board review first
Yes.
part of March.
So, anybody got a motion to approve?
I have a motion
the
to
guidelines?
approve the guidelines and the amend the real and personal property guidelines and requirements for poverty exemption.
I'll second that.
Moving seconded that these new guidelines for poverty exemption be allowed. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Poverty lines are adopted.
And we'll have those on file if anyone wants to look at them. We have to have them on file in the office.
Okay, the planning and zoning training, that's already taken place, hasn't it? Has the planning and zoning taken place?
Training?
This is in March.
Which one is, oh, board review did, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason that I want to talk about this is we do have a sacrificial lamb in our presence.
We have
And,
to change that, Patty, we need to talk about that later. I called on that, they won't let us do what we wanna do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How would they know? I mean, what we wanted to do is get a virtual learning and put it on display like we did before with the zoning thing. Put it up on the wall and have us all just listen to it and not get any credits for it. That was my scheme. I thought it was a good idea. But if they won't let us do it, even if it's a virtual, that's,
Well, each person would have to pay the 350 or whatever.
okay.
Anybody that wanted to participate has to pay the fee.
Well, the township has to pay the fee.
Yeah, and that would be
Which is good, right? We're all about education.
$85 if you were a member and $115 if you're not a member.
Okay.
Are we members?
No, and that's why we were gonna have a sacrificial lamb become the member and get all the materials, and then,
Can the township have a membership and then the people that go from the township would get the reduced rate? Can we have a membership as a township? And then they don't pay the full rate.
I can look into that.
That would be the wisest, I think, depending on what their membership price is, but I would look into that if that's possible.
I'll bet it's quite a bit.
Well,
This is planning, this is, I bet it's $600 or more.
yeah, it's $65 a person to join,
Oh, well,
and then you have to pay $85 for every class.
That's the American Planning Association, right? So we can,
this is the Michigan Association,
Michigan Association of Planners.
It says you can join for $65 and receive a membership discount. Is that for the township though? I'm wondering if we can.
How long is the membership for?
It's annual.
Yearly.
Yeah, but no, I think that that's for one person because they offer educational credits.
Well, okay, I tell you what, we need to have some education, though, education's a good thing, so we'll put it in the budget somehow and get some people there.
Yeah, we can also look at Michigan Township Association, and the one that Bob and I went to, was free because Ottawa County was paying for it. And then they just invited, they had some attorneys come in. You know, the attorneys were accredited to do the training, but,
When
So-
Craig and I went, and George, we had to pay in Ottawa County.
oh,
And the one that we're looking, we've got, this is on ZBA, we need more, we've got new members and even the old members, I think they could all use a refresher.
yeah, and Williams and Works is willing and able to do a ZBA training,
Okay.
but, you know, that's at the rate of $100 for their staff person.
Will that be cheaper than?
$104.
And then it could be, all the members could be, go.
Right,
Yeah, that's, and we could video it.
well, and there'd be opportunity for give and take too.
Okay, well, there's
You would have
another.
to ask them.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that this needs a little bit more research.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we do want the money for training.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
I totally
Please, please.
agree with you, Susan. You guys are working your behinds off, but it would help. Training is always good.
So it's 115 fees?
Well, Susan's gonna look into
Oh,
Williams and Works, Mike.
Well, that would be for ZBA, but then there is, and I don't know if you want them as a separate line item.
But this is advanced CBA, this isn't basic CBA?
And that's, yeah, that's, my concern was that that advanced one would not be appropriate for our ZBA.
Well, yeah, I think that you're right.
So, but with ZBA, we could have Williams and Works do one, come here and do it.
And it would be half price, because if we don't have memberships, even if we do have pay for everybody to have a membership, then pay for them to go to a class that's over their head, that sounds terrible.
So, yeah, and I can look, tonight, tomorrow, about the Muskegon Township Association to see what trainings they have coming up.
Muskegon Township or Michigan?
Did I say Muskegon? I
Yeah.
meant Michigan
Okay,
Township
all right.
Association.
Thank you, Susan. All right, well, that was a good conversation. Let's just table that one.
Or budget $500.
Well, need more than that.
Okay.
But we're getting started on that, that's good.
Yeah.
Just keep
Okay.
it going.
all right. So the last one is just the border review Wednesday, March 15th, 2023, 1 to 4 p.m. and 6 to 9 p.m. And also on Thursday, March 16th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. This will be advertised in the Beacon, not in the Chronicle.
It won't be on M-Line. Even though I said everything was gonna go to M-Line. Then I said,
You already called the door, didn't you?
I put it on the door, it's on the website. I was gonna put it in the Beacon, but the chair of the board review asked it, I was gonna put it on M-Line, and the chair asked that it go in the Beacon. And we all agreed.
Okay. All right, I just got one comment, one around taxes. This is the percentages for the, this was in the paper, so it was gonna be, let's see, was it in already?
No, it's at the very bottom when it will be in.
February 26th it was in, but it's the tentative ratios and the factors. So for agriculture, we're at 46.87 according to the county, 46.87%. So we're gonna get factored 1.06678. Commercial is 48, which is a little higher, but we're gonna get a factor 2. Industrial same, but residential is way down. 44.65, we get factored 1.11982. So,
And that's set by the state.
That's the
Well-
county equalization,
Oh.
the CPI,
Yeah.
the consumer price index,
we don't have that yet. do we?
yeah, it's 5%. It's high as it can be. It's not gonna be.
That's where the sting comes.
That's where the sting, that goes on the taxable value.
So what we have here in this township is the Headley Amendment. Everybody remembers the Headley Amendment from the 70s, where we roll back the local taxes, and every time the tax value goes up, our income in the township goes down. Now, a couple years ago, we asked to go to 1 mil. We are right now at 0.722 of a mil, and that's what the township itself gets. So when you wonder, why isn't the township fixing that road? Well, everything costs, and we're not getting that much. It's going out into the state, to the county, it's going to the municipalities that, or, you know,
The schools,
the school, the ambulance, the sheriff, you know, all those public entities. So we asked a couple of years ago if we could go to 1 mil and get rid of the Headley Amendment and stop the rollback. And we lost that election by 17 votes. And we haven't asked again. I don't know if we should.
It costs to ask.
It does cost to ask, but if you jump onto an election that's already there, then you can pay less. You can't, if we held an election just on that, then it would, the whole thing would come out of our pockets, and we, if it went down again,
None of make as much as we spent.
no, we wouldn't make as much as we spent. So if there's another election, we would jump on it, and then pay a portion. But we don't want to do that if there's no support for it.
okay. I don't have any other comments. Is there any other public comment?
I have a comment, it was tax day today. 14, just in case you didn't know. Along with Valentine's.
I'd love to show the state.
Yes.
If there's no public
Oh,
comment?
there's somebody's hand.
Oh.
I'm Craig. I think it's important to take a minute and just, I'm speaking for myself, but I know I speak for a lot of people in the township. And I think it's important that we encourage you guys and what you guys are going through. And we speak to a lot of people, and across the board, we appreciate the work you guys have been doing on this solar issue. And I know it's very difficult, and I appreciate everybody that's been collegial to each other, and I know this is very difficult. You guys have been thrust into a high-level legal negotiations and debates and conversations and planning, and you aren't, you know, you're doing all the heavy lifting. And so we wanted to encourage you also to continue to be bold and be courageous in this fight, and we're thankful that you guys are doing this. And just as encouraging as we are to you guys, I resent when NGR and Solar comes into these meetings with their cameras and with their threats of lawsuits, and the fact that they're trying to FOIA your emails and bully you guys into all these hours you have to spend, thousands of pages, into hours you have to spend dotting I's and crossing T's. So I know that you are supported. Continue to be bold and courageous, and we appreciate you guys.
say something.
One quick thing, and you said it really well, Craig. I really feel bad for you guys at 50 hours. Thank God. Thanks for answering that question, Patty, that you charged for those services, because these companies love to come into a small community and try to push and bully and just create hostility. And you guys have been nothing but graceful, and you've worked so hard on our behalf. So I'd like to take Craig's words as well, continue to be bold. You know, I know we've sent you a lot of different things, and at the end of the day, if the solar array is allowed at all, hopefully much tinier than it is, send out an RFP. They might not even be the right partner. There's no reason why you have to go with them, and they certainly have not impressed a lot of us. So thank you for all you're doing. You guys are great. Thank you.
And I just wanted to tell you that anybody that sent anything here, it's in the FOIA. Yeah, they wanted to see all correspondences that were sent to us because of the solar.
Sent in the mail, texted,
Yeah,
Or email.
Patty, I don't know that everybody knows what a FOIA is.
it's a Freedom of Information Act. And the Freedom of Information Act, they can go right down with bullet points and say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want. All of us had to look through our emails to see if we had any personal emails that were about solar. I had one, friend of mine from Maryland wanted to know what the sample's going on over there. So, but everybody looked through their emails. We had to make 3 copies of everything, because one had to go to our attorney, one had to go into our storage room, our vault, and one had to go to them. And that way, if we get called into court, we have everything that we gave them, an exact duplicate. And so every correspondence, and I can tell you the stack's pretty high, is in there. And if anybody wants me to go through and redact that they had babies in their house, or that they wanted their kids to take over that house, or if they had a wedding in their backyard, or then that would just be more time that I would, but I would do that for you. I just want you to know I would do that for you, because I care about you guys so much.
Okay, I don't have any other comments, and with no further business, this meeting stands adjourned. We're gonna go